Welcome into Triple Zeros, the anti-hot take sports show. I am your host, Josh Buckhalter. Be sure to follow me on X at Josh G. Buck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports. Website is clockersports.com, and the email address is contact@clockersports.com. You can follow the show on Facebook and on X at 30spod. That's the number 30spod. And you can follow the website, obviously, on all platforms at Clocker Sports. So that includes TikTok. Please go ahead and run up the TikTok and run up the YouTube channel, Clocker Sports. Getting right into it, been away for a week or so. At the season ended, had to take some time to decompress because it was just a lot of ripping and running. And I actually tried to settle down, but got hit with a major storm here in Chicago. It's been cold and frozen and a lot of snow, like I said, over the last couple of weeks. But we are back in the saddle with the NFL playoffs into the divisional round. I have a slate of games. I'm actually recording this just a couple of hours before kickoff on the early game between, I believe it's the Packers and no, that's the later game. It's the Texans and the Ravens. I do believe that I would have gone into this game feeling a lot more confident in the Baltimore Ravens. You know what? Before I even get further into that, let me just go ahead and do this. That's how you know when I've been off for a little bit, when I forget to do the sounder. Jumping into the playoff picture, though, and before we get into anything else, because I haven't done picks, and I want to make sure I got these picks out there before any of the action started, and I was influenced any further by what I was seeing. But starting off, like I said, Texans and the Ravens. I would have picked the Ravens with a lot of confidence had they not lost Mark Andrews for this game. I am still confident in their ability to overcome it. I'm confident in Lamar's ability to play well enough to win this game, but I am not at all confident as confident, rather, let me put it that way. I am not as confident as I was initially in my pick, just because Andrews, we know, has been a safety blanket for Jackson. Now, I will say he's got better weapons this year. Zay Flowers has turned into a weapon. OBJ has popped up when necessary. And you've gotten you still got Lamar Jackson. You still got the quarterback. But on the other side of that is C.J. Stroud on the Texans, and we know that he's had the magical rookie season, and I just don't know if when you start taking away key pieces like that with Andrews, then you're going to get a little bit of trouble. But like I said, I'm still going with the Ravens on this one. Just, again, not as confident as I was maybe 24 hours ago before I found out about the Andrews stuff. So that'll be the pick there. And then you go with the Packers and the San Francisco 49ers in the late game. I rode with Packers against Dallas. I actually I took them on my bet slip because I wasn't confident in Dallas's ability to stop what the Packers like to do, and that is they can run the ball, but they also get the ball out quickly enough to where the pass rush is kind of negated, so you have to be really tough in coverage. And Dallas is a very opportunistic team, but they were not one that I think made me feel like they were going to be overly physical with the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, something that I saw against the Bears, right, with the Packers and how they were doing that Week 18 matchup and how the Bears were constantly playing the Packers off. And I was like, they're going to eat that up because they don't care about going deep. They'd rather just, matriculate their way down the field the defense allows them. And they'll do that to you until they get to the end zone, and you'll be like, oh, no, now we're backed up. So we saw that play out against the Bears. We saw that play out against the Cowboys, and now they could go up against the 49ers team that I don't want to say it's going to play it a little bit differently, but their personnel might allow them to. They have the stout line like the Cowboys had up front, which is obviously both of those I think would be steps over what the Bears have. Maybe not in the run defense department for the Cowboys, but definitely in the pass rush overall as a team. And then in the back end, they're definitely more solid than the Cowboys were this past season. And then so I would say you got the Bears run defense, and then the Cowboys and the Bears, really the Bears front seven, and maybe a touch of the Cowboys back end. I'm not sure how you would really kind of rationalize what the Niners are compared to those two examples, but I do know that offense is a well-oiled machine, and so for a Packers defense that has had trouble at times throughout the season, getting stops, getting pressure. All those types of things, playing with discipline, all those types of things, right? I wouldn't be surprised to see that revert back to that in the divisional round against the 49ers. And then for the Niners, it's all about Brock Purdy. We've heard a lot of talk about him this season, the MVP talk and all that stuff. Is he a game manager? Is he somebody who can change the game? I think we'll see that this week. I think he's going to have a lot of pressure on him because I do believe that Love is a guy who, while he may not be the game changer by definition that we think of when we try to picture that in our minds, I do think Love is a guy who's comfort in the offensive system, comfort with his teammates, comfort in what the play calls are coming into his headset, that it allows him to play at an elite level, if that makes sense. So that makes you elite, fine, but you know what I mean. I'm talking about you might not look at him and think that he has elite traits, right? He's a good runner. He's got a good arm. He's really good accuracy. Maybe you don't say any of those things are great, but his comfort within what he's doing around him, and I think I talked about that before on this show, when everybody was talking about there's going to be such a fall off for Green Bay, I don't know because he's seen it. All that he had to do was go out there and put it into practice. So none of what I've seen from Love this season has been surprising. The rough start, the trending upward, all of that, leading the team, all that has surprised me. But I think we're going to see this week if his ability to lift his teammates, right, is able to overcome the well-oiled machine that is the 49ers, and vice versa. Can Brock Purdy prove that he has enough playmaking in him to, make those one or two plays that it might take to decide a game like this? Because at this level, it's close. These are usually really solid matchups, and so I'm going to go with the 49ers, but just like the Ravens, I'm probably not as confident as I would have been had maybe the matchup, in this case, had the matchup gone to Dallas. I would have definitely picked the 49ers hands down. But like I said, I've seen Jordan Love twice this season, up close, right, in person, and then I watched him against Dallas last week, and just the love. If he's able to get comfortable back there, good luck. Good luck, because the San Francisco secondary is solid, but I don't think it would be anything that you might write home about. Like they're a bunch of sturdy players, right? But the teeth of that defense is definitely in its front seven. So Baltimore and San Fran are going to be the home teams. Are going to be my picks for today. I'm not, again, overly confident in them as I was a few hours ago for the Baltimore, and then before I found out the matchup for the 49ers, but I'm definitely taking those two teams. And then for Sunday's matchups, give me Buccaneers and Lions. Give me the Buccaneers. I like their toughness, I like their physicality. Now, I will say this. That Lions defense is going to put some points on them. I'm probably just picking Baker Mayfield over Jared Goff, which may be a bad choice. Two former number one overall picks who didn't work out with their previous teams and have now caught their you could say second win, but really their first win. Baker's bounced around a couple of times, but he's really found success here with Tampa Bay and kind of fits what they want to do, attacking the defenses down the field. Jared's a distributor. He's got a lot of weapons to do that with. So it's very interesting, this matchup, because I think if the Lions could run the ball better, I would have a better feel for it. But I feel like if you're going to expose, and they can, so let me not even go there. Let me rephrase that. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay because I like how aggressive they are defensively and their personnel. The Lions are aggressive defensively, but their personnel can definitely be had on the back end, especially. They don't have a great pass rush, and they don't do a good job outside of Aiden Hutchinson. They don't do a good job, like I said, of locking down opposing receivers. So that could be an issue for Detroit in this game. Now, that being said, this isn't going to be an easy contest by any stretch of the imagination, because like the Lions do have a very solid collection of weapons for Jared Goff to distribute that ball too. So with that being the case, I'm going to go with Tampa Bay in this game. I'm going to probably call this like a field goal game because I think it's going to come down to a defensive stand, and then whoever can just muster out those points. I just don't think it's going to be the offensive showdown. Now, that being the case, I wouldn't be surprised either to say that, or to see Detroit come out there and just light up Tampa Bay in the first half for 21 points and boat race them just out the gates like that. I just don't know if it finishes that way, and I'm not expecting it. I think Tampa will play them tough. I think Tampa has enough offensively to stick with what they're doing, what the Lions want to do offensively, and this game could be a lot closer than it may appear when you think about the two teams on paper and what they do. And then finally for this weekend, you got the Chiefs and the Bills. This one is interesting because I still don't think that there's any question between who's the better quarterback on these two teams, but there's definitely a question on who has the better team, and it's not really even a question in that regard because the best quarterback plays for the Chiefs, in my opinion, still, and Patrick Mahomes, but the best team in this matchup is the Buffalo Bills. And that's because you have a Chiefs team that has not found its stride at the wide receiver position. You have an aging Travis Kelce who found his rhythm down the stretch, but is still an aging, less explosive version of himself. Defensively, the Chiefs have gotten by with one of, if not the best defense in the league this past season. But you have to be able to consistently put up points. And when you're facing a team like the Bills, who is going to be aggressive, who are going to put the pressure on you with their offense, that becomes a problem. Like the onus still shifts back to your offense, regardless whether or not you want to do it. That being said, I don't. This is probably the toughest one, right? So I've gone Ravens, I've gone 49ers, and I've gone Buccaneers. That's two home teams on Saturday, and then I took the road team here on Sunday. I'm not sure which way I want to go with this one because, to be honest, as much as I want to pick against Mahomes, and I'm probably going to pick the Bills anyway because I just don't trust the Chiefs. That's really what this is. I'm going to pick the Bills because I don't trust the Chiefs. Not Mahomes or Allen or vice versa. I don't trust the Chiefs around Mahomes to pick up the slack enough to make it to overcome what the Bills are going to do offensively. And now that defense is going to have to show, but it's going to have to be 3 receivers deep and 4 receivers deep because Allen will go to those guys. Now, we know Mahomes will too, but I'm just saying how that defense is going to be tested for Kansas City as opposed to maybe other weeks. They're going to be tested with 2 tight end looks. They're going to be tested with the running game that they found for the Bills now down the stretch. Like, these are things that I'm just not sure that the Chiefs are prepared to handle defensively, but more importantly, prepared to keep up with as an offense. So we'll see how that all goes. So my 4 picks for this weekend are Ravens, 49ers, Buccaneers, and Bills. That is 3 home teams and a road team. We're going to lock them picks in before kickoff so we can get some money off this weekend because we are sitting at home watching. The Bears are at home and preparing for the NFL draft, and that'll lead us to our next topic here, the Bears and their quarterback conundrum. And it's really a larger topic we'll expand on, but I'm going to start with the Bears because I have something that I've been watching all season. So we all know the Bears hold the number 1 overall pick. Also number 9, I want to say, is it 9 or 10? Not important right now. The important part is number 1 and what they do with that pick. So the debate is Caleb Williams or keep Justin Fields. You'll also have some sprinklings of Drake May in there, and whatever that ends up being, I would still wager that it's more likely that it's between Fields or Williams at this point. I have long preached the support Fields has in the locker room. All of his teammates, defense, offense, the growth that they've talked about. If you saw Jalen Johnson's interview with Keyshawn Johnson a little bit ago, I want to say a couple of days ago, maybe Wednesday, Tuesday, he talked about Fields' development and some of the things that he said, I think the choice of words were very interesting. Whenever you ask about Fields' support in the locker room to the coaches or to even General Manager Ryan Poles, Matty Ruflu said that it showed the kind of character, the kind of man that he was. Ryan Poles said it was good that he had that kind of support. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody suggest that in any way, shape, or form solidifies his position or should even solidify his position. We've heard the players say that DJ Moore, which I think probably should be the loudest voice, and if from that group, right, stump for Fields publicly and say he doesn't see what the big deal is, he doesn't understand it. DJ had one of, not his best season this past season with the Bears, with Fields at quarterback. They've had a connection since he got here. The list goes on and on. List of reasons goes on and on for why Moore might say that. When Johnson spoke, he talked about Fields not having the best situation. He talked about the work he's put in. He's talked about how you could tell when Justin's not as confident as opposed to when he is confident. And they've called out the offense on how it was being worked with Getsy, not even before he left. They were doing it while he was still here. So that's not a surprise to hear that. But there was still that lack of he's the guy. And I don't know if that was just a business decision because he doesn't know how it's going to go, what the bosses are trying to do, because Jalen's still trying to get his big contract, and it sounds like they're going to do it. He feels like he's got all the leverage, and he does. All-pro season, Pro Bowler, right? Show that he can get the takeaways after we knew that he could take away part of the field. But now we know he can take the ball away, too, if you're going to test him anyway. And that couldn't happen at a better time, right? Like he went years without even being challenged in that way, and then this year the ball kept finding him. I think that's you might argue that that's why you don't pay him because it only happened 1 year. But then I would remind you, takeaways are a fluky stat, first of all. So if you're paying somebody for takeaways, you're already paying for the wrong reasons. And he's showing you the solid things, right? He's showing you that he can do the solid, the technique stuff, the technical stuff that had him drawing praise from an Aaron Rodgers. So that this season just worked out perfectly for him. I'm super happy to see how that all played out. I just wonder, outside of Moore and a few of the guys who have said that, Jaquan Brisker has backed them, I don't know. I wonder if they have the writing on the wall, because I didn't get a chance to ask Poles this, but I was very curious. He's, how involved, how informed rather would Fields be throughout this process. And here's where I'm at with it. No one knows anything that Ryan Poles is going to do, and if you say you do, you're lying. And I mean that in the most respectful way possible. And this is the perfect time. This is the smokescreen season, right? Subterfuge season where everyone knows what everyone's doing and no one knows anything at the same time. We've had players come out and Alex Brown's recent appearance on Barstool. I'm not a fan of the network, the platform, and the comments kind of took me off guard just because Brown laid out a case for why people, how Mitch got a raw deal in Chicago and how people hated him and how presented his case where how he's a better passer than Justin is, and asked why people really hate him. and then proceeded to admit that he doesn't care for Fields' rushing production. Now, if you want to have a debate about what's the best way to be successful in the NFL, and you want to have a debate about longevity in the NFL and all those kind of things, and how Mitchell's a better passer than Fields, that's fine. But to ignore the production of one player to make your point is and literally to ignore it in a way that is very similar to what you're accusing others of doing is asinine. I just don't understand the point of that. And I listened to it a lot in the local discussion, the local discourse about what the Bears should do, could do, how they're faced with this opportunity that you just can't pass up, and how financially it's the right move, and how you just know that Caleb Williams is going to be he's this generational prospect, and none of it addresses like actual tangible things that you could apply it to. Like, I'm not saying you're even wrong. I'm just wondering about the process that people are using to get to these destinations. So you want to talk about, we know Caleb's a can't miss prospect and he's generational. That word gets used around every couple of seasons at least, if not more frequently. So the generational thing's out the window. Performances against upper tier teams. Okay, you want to make excuses. He didn't have the proper line. His coaching and his skill positions weren't all of that. So you can say that about about him, but you can't say that about the guy in the NFL. You see where I'm saying here, that there are lines being drawn in the sand that are clearly showing that you have a bias, but no one wants to admit their bias. Just say that you want it this way as opposed to that way. That's fine, but to dress up and put the lipstick on the pig, I think, is terribly disingenuous, and it's coming from a lot of the loudest voices in the room, and that's been agitating. There's a lot you can pick apart for Justin Fields. I'm not ever going to sit there and deny that. But the stuff that we're boosting Caleb for is quite odd, because a lot of it is stuff that we've seen from Fields. A lot of the knocks on Caleb are the knocks that you have against Fields. You want to talk about the draft process ranks him higher than any other prospect, and that's cool. How often has that been wrong? I just feel like there's a lot of people who just want one or the other, but don't want to say it that way. They want to sound like there's some deep philosophical explanation for it, and there really isn't. At least not the one that you're making, more often than not. Financially, you don't have to worry about that this year. The Bears have cap space, and Justin Fields is still under contract. You're not worried about that. Oh, and well, then when it runs up, then you have to pay him. If he's earned that money, guess what? Who cares? They'll happily pay him. I just don't understand the gymnastics that we're doing to try to justify our preference. Just say that you want this guy. That's fine. That's A-okay. But to sit here and blatantly ignore facts, to ignore this metric, ignore that metric, to amplify this one and downplay, like, what are you doing? What are you really? And then fans, short for fanatic, I like to lean on that, eat it up, because it comes from the loudest voices who are literally just there to do just that. I maybe it's imploring people to do further research into their own talks. The Trubisky Fields thing is crazy to me. I can't believe we're still doing this, because it's like, well, clearly the whole fan base didn't turn on him, because we wouldn't be having this debate. But whatever. And I'll close the Bears section on this with my thoughts on the situation, on what they will do. I don't know. I will say that it looks like the roster has been built to compete now. It looks like the players and a lot of the players, maybe that they're not fully behind, I don't know, but a lot of the players are behind Justin Fields. I don't think that it would take Caleb too long to overtake that, or to put that aside and win over his new teammates if he is the choice. Winning would help that a lot. Doesn't have to be a step back. I'm just not, after what I saw this season, and I'm not talking to Caleb Williams. I'm not watching all the hundreds of hours of film that the scouts are. I'm not doing a lot of the stuff that they are doing to influence their decision. I didn't see the stuff that is supposed to make him be the guy, at the risk of maybe building out the rest of my roster for another year or two even, and having another chance at the next generational guy. Because that's usually where this goes. Like I said, he could be very good, and if they took him, that would be perfectly fine. Just build the rest of the roster, because you're not done. You still have stuff to do, and that you're not handicapped by taking him. Like, there's so many paths that I just don't know why we're feeling like, oh, it's the they're doing 100% they're doing this. People I talk to around the league that feel like they're doing this. They don't talk to those people around the league. So why the hell would they know? How would they know? They don't know what they're doing. Oh, Cliff Kingsbury, they're interviewing him. That's a definite lean toward. That means that they're definitely taking Caleb Williams. Cliff Kingsbury coached 3, going on 3 now, number 1 overall picks, and the best quarterback in the NFL, like I just talked about, Patrick Mahomes. There's very good reason to interview Cliff Kingsbury, even if you're not taking Caleb Williams. Matter of fact, it might be even the best reason, the best example of why you would interview him if you're not taking Caleb, because he's done it with 3 different. Now, you could argue that they're very similar, like the Heisman winners, the first overall picks are all smaller quarterbacks, and the more prototypical guy was the guy who was playing off script a lot. They're similar that way. There are a lot of off script guys. So maybe the idea behind Cliff Kingsbury would be, hey, can you do what you did for those previous 4 guys for our guy? I just, it's a bold thought, but it doesn't mean that they're taking. It doesn't mean they're not. I'm lost sometimes with how we get to where we're getting. And I know a lot of times it's because we're voices of authority and you say it with conviction and you stand by you stand on what you believe. That's cool. You don't got to be disingenuous. You don't got to act like you don't have to put falsities, false positives, whatever the word is that I'm looking for right now out of frustration. You don't have to put that out there to justify your point. You want guy A or guy B under center next season. I mean, we can all agree most likely that you want a new center. You may want another lineman, but you definitely want a new center. You want at least one receiver, right? Maybe you want some juice in the backfield, some additional explosiveness out of the backfield. You want another pass rusher. I think those are things that people all can universally agree the Bears could definitely use. Quarterback is where you see this split, and you always see this split. And the lies you tell, the lies you tell to justify wanting player X versus player Y. I just don't do it. Just say, hey, this guy's the guy. And you can give your reason for why you want that person. But and like I said, there's plenty of valid reasons to argue against this player and for that player. But when you start ignoring things and start ignoring how this player is very similar to that player in this way, that's why I lose not respect, but just like, what are we doing? I'm confused now because what are we doing? You're talking in circles. Fortunately, it's not just the Bears who are dealing with quarterback problems, because a lot of teams are still up in limbo about their future at the game's most important position. We'll start with another team that I covered, the Minnesota Vikings. They are wondering what to do with Kirk Cousins. I wrote about a piece for Heavy on Vikings about the potential of replacing Kirk Cousins with a Tua Tagovailoa if Kirk was to go down to Miami, where he's got a connection to Mike McDaniel, the head coach there, and Tua showed that he might not be the cold weather guy, or at least the outdoors quarterback, and might thrive better. Fine. The big underlying point here is, what do the Vikings do at quarterback? Because they're a team that has flirted with some successes, but I think if you look at Kirk Cousins' career, you might see that the high of the 13-4 record, I believe it was in 2022, is probably the high, the peak, and then you bow out in the postseason. With all of the roster decisions that they have to make, you could definitely argue run it back for another year at least to see what you can do to try to maximize that window, because you've built a lot of this to win now. But because they've had to rebuild and retool a lot of it over the last couple of seasons, the Vikings have. They are able to also pivot right now and maybe not take that step back as much as a lot of teams might think. If you trade Cousins and you can get a first-round pick, right, from a team that had a bad year but is not trying to take that rookie quarterback, you could up your ante and jump up there and get one of those premier passers to redirect your franchise into the future. We've heard a lot of links from Cousins to the Atlanta Falcons because they're zeroing in, it seems like, on Bill Belichick as head coach. Cousins, I wrote about this as well. Cousins praised Bill Belichick and had nothing but good things to say, and was open to the idea of him playing for him. And he said that we got to wait for free agent to see what happens. If you're the Vikings and you got a guy who's openly talking about being willing to play for somebody else, his mind is clearly elsewhere. That's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying it's what's happening. He's going to be 36 by the time the season starts. You've had 2-3 playoff appearances in his 6 seasons on your team. You have to pay him a lot of money, and he's coming off of a major surgery. Now, Cousins has promoted, or touted the players who have come before him who've had the same Achilles surgery and have come back to be as good, if not better. But if you're the Vikings front office, are you willing to bank on him being another one of those guys? And if he's only able to come close to what he's been, what does that do for your team? What's the likelihood that he's going to be better than he was? His problem has never been mobility. He's not the most nimble quarterback anyway. So it's not like you're worried about that. You worry about him being able to manipulate the pocket, sure. But his issue is always turnovers. And now I guess you'd wonder if he feels like he can't move even, if his movement skills are diminished even slightly, would he hurry more throws? Would he put himself in more risk by trying to get the ball out even quicker when it may not be needed? These are the questions that the Vikings front office have to answer, and I feel like with all of that laid out on what's happened with Cousins, they might be better off taking their chances without him. You didn't win the division this year. You didn't win it in 2021, right? You had the 13-4, but you were like 11-1 in one-score games. Some fluky stuff that just contributed to it. You've got enough pieces on the team where if you took and hats off to Vikings general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah for acknowledging that if you don't feel like you're close enough to competing seriously, there's nothing wrong with taking a small step back. That's not verbatim, but that's the gist of what he said, and it's pretty close. Hats off to you for that, because I totally agree. A lot of times we see teams, and I see this with the Bulls, and we'll talk about them a little bit, but you get wrapped up in we're so close. We had if these breaks went our way, if this went our way, if that went our way, but it's not. And you're counting on happenstance. I asked the Bears players, and I know I refer to that a lot, but I asked a lot of them this season, turnovers are a fluky stat. What is something that you guys feel like you can lean on going forward? And almost to a man, they talked about their development, but really their ability to stop the run. That was something tangible that they can impact on a regular basis. Being smart in their assignments, being physical at the point of attack, tackling well, right? Those are things that they can do directly. You can't control where the quarterback's going to throw the ball. You can't control if one of your other teams is going to deflect it and help you get a tip. Like, that stuff impacts your interception, your takeaway numbers. For Minnesota, you can control what you do at quarterback, the game's most important position. For all that Cousins has brought, you have not achieved the success that all of this fuss is seeming to be, right? That it doesn't happen to be. It doesn't seem like it's the best use of your future, and then they're limited in assets until they make some other moves. This is probably one where I would say they could go a different direction. The Dolphins, I totally understand them. If I was the Dolphins, they might want to go get Russell Wilson. That might be the best. Now, you could say, well, Russ is not, he hasn't been that dangerous guy, right? Mr. Unlimited. He hasn't been that guy, but he played well for the Broncos last year. I don't think there was a match in terms of styles, period, and personalities, what they were trying to do on the field between him and Sean Payton with the Broncos, who I will be covering for heavy going forward, so just keep an eye on new content from that. I'm not sure what the Broncos are going to do. I'm just getting into their plans. I do plan on suggesting some stuff for them, but I don't think they've already said that Russ is all but gone there. So why not in Miami, where we know that he can distribute, we know that he likes to push the ball down the field. That's another thing. And if the Dolphins can keep him upright, right, protect him, we know that he can be a playmaker. And I think that's what the Dolphins are missing. They had their distributor, and Tua is very accurate, but maybe some of the times when you needed him to step up and make a play, it was not in him to do so. I think Russ has that. Maybe you missed some of the more unscheduled stuff, but McDaniel's been a creative offensive mind. Maybe he can find that medium that Sean Payton didn't, because, again, I don't think that they ever really vibed, Russell and Sean. So Dolphins, I think, would I don't know if they will move on from Tua, but I could see it. And if they did, maybe not Kirk, because I don't know if Kirk, again, has shown to be that playmaker that you want either. But Russ has. And with the skill position that you have, he might not have to do as much risky stuff because guys are getting open. You're scheming guys open. Guys are running the ball hundreds of feet. Like, you're doing the stuff to help complement what he does well. That would be one fit that I think would work. Elsewhere, you got Jared Mayo taking over. And can I just say, hats off to Jared Mayo for coming with the uppercut day one. Talking about he sees color, and if you don't see color, then you're blind or something to that effect. In Boston, as like their first black head coach, and not even like as their first, like, dude, hats off, because that's some tough stuff right there. And it's one of those things where you can't question it because he's seen it. Mayo played for the Patriots, coached for the Patriots. He knows what that town can be like, and not to say that it's like that for all the time, or that everybody is like that, but he knows what he speaks. And for him to say it on day one, I think was an incredible sign of his confidence in his position, and a sign of leadership for, I think, a team that might have struggled in the past to get players to come there for that reason. Just saying, it's a real concern. So hats off to Jared Mayo for that. The Falcons, like I said, are looking at Bill Belichick. The Commanders are taking their time looking. I think they're zeroing in on offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. That's a good fit there for the Commanders. And was I can't remember his name. Adam Peters, their new general manager. I know Josh Harris is the new owner, but they're overhauling stuff, and it's going to look a lot different. I even heard that they're considering to do a rebrand, so we'll see what goes on with that. The Jets are looking to make their 1980s throwback uniforms, the permanent ones. I had a friend on social media point out, though, that I think that's the one that Aaron Rodgers got hurt in, so that's an interesting decision to make. Elsewhere, like I said, I did the playoff picks. I'm trying to think of any other quarterback conundrums that are really out there questioning what to do. Okay, let's talk about the Broncos. So if they're going to move on, I think the Broncos would be the team that should go look for Justin Fields. I really think that would be. He's a big guy. He's strong. I don't know if he's as accurate as Sean Payton wants, so maybe that's where the marriage falls apart again. But I think that his ability with what they do physicality-wise, running the ball-wise, I think would mesh well in Denver. So I wanted to put that out there. It's going to be an interesting week of games. I already gave you my 4 picks. I do think that we're going to see a lot of, not trades, but some movement this offseason, as a lot of teams are going to have to keep up, because teams like the Lions, teams like the Packers, teams like the 49ers are built in a way that their success isn't going anywhere. So I'm interested to see who tries to buy their way into that kind of contention, and who decides that, we're still a ways away from doing what they're doing, so we're going to go the slow and steady route. But we're going to switch gears real quick and get to some NBA coverage. So we are nearing the NBA's trade deadline on February 8th, less than a month to go now, 3 weeks to go until that arrives, and there's a lot of smoke around a lot of teams that I cover, which is making for some very, 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 very busy days and long nights. We'll start with the alphabetically Atlanta Hawks, and DeJounte Murray has been the focal point of a lot of trade rumors over the last month or so. He's hit back-to-back game winners. They've won 3 of their last 5 games. This last one came without Trae Young. Like, a lot of good stuff has happened since the trade talk has picked up. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Murray's been linked to, I think, as many as 8 teams that we know names of. We've heard there's been several reports. The Lakers have been the most prominent team, because a lot of the other teams that we've heard of him linked to have also been kind of, cast out because they're not looking for what he brings. They're not looking to make that kind of commitment, whatever reason. Lakers have been prominent. They haven't necessarily had the ammo to go and get him. We'll see if they can get that, because their assets have diminished in value since the season started, which is not surprising when you look at what they've done. They just lost to the Brooklyn Nets, who have been on their own free fall in their last game. So there's a lot going on there. Now, their questions have been about whether or not the Lakers should move Austin Reeves. And I like Austin Reeves, and I see why they want to keep him. But he's not, I don't know if the upside is there. I think this might be what he is, and their valuation of him, a player who can get hot, who will have, streaks of games where he's putting up big numbers. I don't know if he'll ever be that consistently, or if he's what they're, again, making him out to be, in what we're hearing from these trade negotiations where they're not wanting to include him. For the Hawks, going to get Austin Reeves is interesting, because you're adding another ball dominant. He's not ball dominant. He can play off the ball. But you're adding another guard to that backcourt who's not strong defensively. On a team that struggled defensively, maybe, like I said, they're saying, screw trying to fix the defense. We're going to just lean into being an offensive juggernaut, somewhat like the Pacers, although their trade for Pascal Siakam definitely helps their defense. There's a lot of moving parts in Atlanta that I think have been set in motion by them, maybe erroneously. Like, I look at what they've done with the John Collins trade and Kevin Huerter. If you had kept those 2 guys, that's a shooter that you've been trying to look for. That's your big man who can play, like him and OO in the front court with Jalen at the 3, because you're trying to move DeAndre Hunter now. Like, there's just so many moving parts here that just seem like they rushed the process after making the Eastern Conference Finals, which in and of itself didn't make sense. Now we know that Trae Young was pushing to help to bring Murray in. If that is the case, that's cool. But I would look at my team as a front office and be like, let's try to find another way before we make that kind of commitment without, and definitely not try to give up what we had to give up. Now, they didn't give up Herter for Murray. They didn't have to give him up. That part was probably the one step too many, right? You traded Gallinari and then you gave up all those picks. That's par for the course. But then to go ahead and move Herter for basically a salary dump, then move Collins for basically a salary dump. Like, those two moves, I think, are the ones that set the Hawks back the most. And they're also trying to, like I said, get from under Hunter's contract, get from under Clint Capella's contract. Bogdanovich's name has been out there. There's so much change that has happened that you wonder, damn, had you just stayed the course, you probably would be able to at least have had your three core players, right? Or those three players that I mentioned, plus the Jalen Johnson in the group. It was mishandled, in my opinion. Not a front office guy, not in the front office. Don't know what the conversations were like before any of this stuff happened. I know the Collins thing had been dragging on for years. But, like, none of it's been handled well. None of it's been executed well. And it's showing on the court now. And so we'll see how they pull themselves out of that tailspin. The Bulls dealt another big blow. Now, they've been good without Zach LaVine over the past, month or whatever it was. He missed, 17 games. But he's going to miss another 2 weeks now because he sprained his ankle, and that is a devastating blow to a Bulls team that's goal is still to trade the two-time All-Star. So I wrote about that for Heavy on Bulls, just how, it's another setback for LaVine, who's come back. When he did come back from that foot injury from early in the season, he tried to play more team-friendly style of ball, off the ball, cutting, passing, defending, all those things, and then to have this happen with injuries being a big question mark in terms of potential suitors. This is something that I think is definitely a big blow to the Bulls' hopes of getting him over the trade deadline, especially if they're still standing on their asking price, which I don't know if you can. I just don't know if the market, they overplayed their hand. And I think that they've done that a few times over the past couple of seasons, but definitely in this case, because with this group as a whole, I wrote about that. This group as a whole, I think the shelf life expired. The moment Lonzo Ball was done last season and his future became, this could be career threat, I would probably start looking at pivots, because that's when you're saying, even if he comes back, how good is he going to be? What's the recovery time like? What's the time to get him back to a close enough level to playing NBA level basketball, right? How long is that going to take to get him back to? Those questions should have led you on a path to say, we probably need to get him out from under this. Because that was, when Lonzo made the comment that they had built a team around him, everybody kind of laughed it off, like they didn't build around you. They kind of did. It wasn't necessarily make him the focal point, but it was around what he could bring to the floor. And without that, the Bulls have looked nothing like the team that we saw for those 35 games. They found pockets of success, but they haven't sustained much. And even when they find those pockets of success, I'm not sure that you feel like that success will translate to playoff success, which they have not had in the 3 years that this group has been, 2+ years that this group has been together. So I'm very curious to see what they decide to do. I think they're going to have to come off that asking price, come down some. I don't know how much, maybe one first-round player and a pick, right? Or some seconds in there or something like that, but you're not getting what you're asking for, just because not only has his play not been up to where, you want to see it if you're going to trade for him, his health is not where it is. He's still got that massive contract. I just wouldn't, I don't know if they're going to be able to find that. The CBA is not set up for that, to allow you to do that kind of splash and then not have the assets to help fill in the margins after the fact. So, Bulls, I think, are at a crossroads. They're going to have to kind of check their ego at the door if they really, really are trying to move LaVine this season. Maybe even have to take a protected future pick and get a couple of assets to help fill out the roster now, if they're still trying to stick with this group, as all signs point that they are, because continuity, folks. Continuity. I don't know. The Lakers, like I said, are trying to figure out what they're going to do. And I already said I think they should move Reeves. The D'Angelo Reeves and D'Angelo Reeves. The Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell backcourt is interesting to me, because it's so explosive sometimes and so dynamic in what, and how they can be ball handlers. They can play off the ball. They can shoot. They can attack you inside and get to the foul line. But they don't do anything consistently. And part of that is because they I think both would thrive with the ball in their hands. That's tough to do when you play with LeBron James. But also, the Lakers, when you're starting a Taurean Prince, and he's been productive. Taurean Prince is a bench player. You're starting at least, and I don't even know if I would say that Reeves is a starter as much as I think he's a really good sixth man. Russell, you could say, is a borderline starter, right? So you're starting 3 guys and 2 two reserves every night and expecting to compete in a Western Conference that's tough. It's tough. We just saw Denver go into Boston and steamroll a rebuilt Celtics team. Like, it's tough. And so Rob Pelinka's getting called out by Kendrick Perkins, saying he's got to get on the phone. And when Pelinka's been accused of taking too long, something like the Bulls, but he's at least shown the aggressiveness, the willingness to pivot off of that when he needs to, right? Even if it's not when he should, it's when he needs to. I don't know if we've seen that from the Bulls, so I look forward to the Lakers making a move. And Javon Bull of The Athletic has actually reported that he expects them to make moves, just the magnitude. What they do, I think, though, will it could have a ripple effect across the rest of the league because LeBron's future is uncertain. Anthony Davis is still going to be around, you would think. So whatever move they make, if they make a move for a player who's on a longer term salary, that might bode well for Davis's future. Shorter term could mean that they might expect Bron to be gone. Now I know they're two separate, if-thens, but that's just how I see that playing out because the Lakers, I think, are also in there and crossroads, which is why I feel like it's weird that they've been kind of hesitant to part with a Reeves or a guy who's still developing in any way when you're dealing with a 39-year-old LeBron James and an aging Anthony Davis, to be perfectly honest with you, right? They're both healthy, and they haven't been healthy like this in years. I'm not sure what the delay is there. The Gabe Vincent signing hasn't helped, and I cautioned about that when he first arrived. Like, man, yeah, you saw that playoff success, but he hasn't really been great before that. So I'm not sure what we're basing that off of, other than this postseason run that was nice, but it was one run. They're gonna have some decisions to make, and I just feel like it starts with what to do with that backcourt that is a sieve defensively. It just is. And Gabe Vincent, for as good as he can be, is still not the biggest guard and has not been the most reliable shooter throughout his career. So, and he's hurt now. Like, you're just banking on so many, again, lesser players to keep up with upper tier teams. It's not a recipe for success. Other trade rumors, we hear that the Blazers are looking to hold on to Jeremy Grant. They are rebuilding, but Grant, the veteran who re-signed this past offseason, is on that big money contract, and he's productive and helping their young guys. Listen, you can't undersell the value of a veteran on a team full of youngsters because they need to know how to handle losses, what to do, how to prepare, all that kind of stuff. The day-to-day stuff is important for young players to learn, and you need those veteran guys. Doesn't always have to be a big money star player, but it helps because those guys, he's happy because he's getting paid, right? He's the man in a way because he's the OG, so they respect him, they defer to him at times. But I also think that this stance from Portland is a way to drum up more of Grant's trade value. When you have a player like him or his teammate Malcolm Brogdon on a team like that, you can kind of see the writing on the wall as a potential suitor, right? You're like, man, we're just gonna wait because that price is gonna come down because they don't need him. He's an older guy. He doesn't fit their timeline. So this could be a way. Hey, we're not trying to move him at all. We're gonna keep him just to get another GM front office thinking, hey. Okay, well, we wanted him. They're going to keep him. We need to go ahead and up that offer a little bit. That's just where I see that. Again, I'm not in the front office. Don't have those conversations. Don't know. That's just, I think that he could be had. They're not looking to trade him, but I think that they could trade him. You know what I mean? So, there's that. And then you got the Warriors, and they were linked to DeJounte Murray, and I don't know if that fits. Their ball movement style. What I've learned about Murray watching him is I think he's definitely best on the ball. He can cut. He can play off the ball, all that stuff, but he's best on the ball. And so you could say, well, he can handle it while Steph is there. That's cool too. But I don't know if Murray's best used in a ball movement offense. I think he's best moved in a drive and kick offense, pick and roll offense, where he can do the majority of the ball handling and get it out to shooters and roll them in and all that kind of stuff. Again, it's not to say it can't work, but you're then also putting him next to somebody who's not the biggest. So Murray's a bigger point guard. He's a smaller shooting guard, and that's the issue that the Falcons. That's the issue that the Hawks have faced with the defense. Like, oh, he's supposed to be the great defender. He's still good in passing lanes, but he's bodying against guys who are bigger than him, like typically. And even the smaller transition to the NBA, that just made those guys his size. It hasn't necessarily given him an advantage in any short way, shape, or form. And so I'm just I could see it, but I can't see it. A guy like Bruce Brown, same thing. He doesn't shoot well enough, but he's a guy I think has played in a system where you do move the ball like that, and he's shown his ability. And you don't want him to have the ball in his hands like that? No way. He doesn't have that ability that Murray has to take over, right? That you want to foster. He's got the ability to fill in the gaps when you need it the most, though. And so I can see that being a better fit than I would the Murray thing. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Toronto is in the fire sale, basically, after moving on from Pascal and OG. We'll see what they do with Gary Trent up there, maybe even Chris Boucher. So maybe even Dennis Schroeder, who knows? But the GM, Masai Ujiri, did say that they are going to be doing some reshuffling, or said that they're still to expect some more trades coming up before the deadline here. So a lot to still go on. We'll be back early next week, try to get in another show before the deadline and stuff to cipher through some more stuff. I just had to get out and get some of this content out here, some of this discussion, because there's a lot of stuff happening. But like I said, man, QB watch is going on as usual in the NFL, especially with the Bears, and then you have the NBA trade deadline giving us plenty to discuss. So we'll definitely try to get back earlier next week and we can cover this again. But that's going to do for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, on X, at Joshy Buck, on Facebook, at Clocker Sports, and on the website, clockersports.com. You can also follow the show on X and on Facebook at 30spod. That's the number 30spod. And follow the site on TikTok and on YouTube at Clocker Sports, both of those at Clocker Sports, and read the stuff. Clockersports.com is where you find everything. But if you want to get it individual, soaring down south for the Hawks, heavy on Bulls, heavy on Lakers, heavy on Vikings, heavy on Broncos, and of course, you can check out Last Word on Sports for the Chiefs content. Until the very next time, you already know what it is, man. I'm gone.